Okay, well, good morning, everyone. We'll go ahead and get started. Again, this is Dave Whalen with American Independent Marketing. Thank you for taking the time this morning to join me on this webinar on critical illness. Critical illness insurance has been around for a good number of years, 20 plus years, and it's been in the United States that long as well. However, it's been more popular in countries like the UK and Canada, where they have socialized medicine. In fact, in Canada, people buy it, and actually mortgage lenders sell it for people to protect their mortgages, but a majority of people that buy it up in Canada will buy it because if they get diagnosed with a critical illness, they're put in a queue to see a specialist, and they'll use those monies from the critical illness policy to pop down to the U.S. for treatment while they have to wait for a specialist up in Canada. One area in which critical illness can play a role for you is a potential solution for people who don't qualify for long-term care. Many of you have been in the market for a while. Remember back in the day, in the 90s in particular, and early 2000s, when long-term care insurance was relatively inexpensive, easy to get issued. The products were simple and affordable, and it fit across all markets. But what we've seen as time has gone on, especially now, is that market is shrinking. Underwriting is tougher. Prices have come up on the long-term care insurance, and the market is narrowed as far as what they're going to cover or not cover. So it's opening up another burgeoning marketplace called gap insurance, in this particular case called critical illness insurance. Four of the key diagnoses that will trigger a long-term care policy also triggers the benefits on a critical illness policy, and those are Alzheimer's, stroke, heart attack, and cancers. However, the big difference between applying for long-term care and applying for critical illness is that you're talking about a relatively short application, very quick turnaround time, like a matter of days to go through underwriting, and a 90+% issue rate versus what we're experiencing overall with about a 70% issue rate with long-term care. Sales for critical illness in the U.S. have been on a steady increase over time. In 2012, it was north of 230 million, and we have no idea where it's going this year, but we know it's going to be trending up as well. This is both individual and in the worksite marketplace as well. And critical illness insurance is available in most all states of the country in one form or another. We're going to be focusing on the GTL offering of critical care, which is a unique offering in the area of critical illness. But we do have other types of critical illness insurance here at American Independent Marketing that we'd be happy to talk with you as well. In fact, we have an upcoming webinar here in the next month on an offering from Transamerica, and then we'll also be talking about the Assurity critical illness as well. So why a product like critical illness? First of all, it's important to understand that critical illness insurance was not developed by an insurance company. It was actually initially conceived by a pair of physicians. Dr. Marius Barnard and his brother, both in South Africa, performed the very first successful heart transplant surgery. And what they realized is that as modern medicine has progressed, more people are surviving these critical illness type diagnoses than ever before. But it puts a heck of a financial burden on people to cover those costs that are not perhaps covered by their own health insurance. In fact, a very interesting statistic is that more than half of the bankruptcies in the U.S. were caused by excess medical expenses, and almost 80% of the people that declared bankruptcy had health insurance. So there are a lot of hidden costs associated with having a critical illness diagnosis. An example would be if you were diagnosed with a particular form of cancer, and the best place to seek treatment for that cancer is MD Anderson Cancer Center in Texas. Well, I'm sure you would make every effort to go there for treatment, but then you have all the other ancillary costs beyond the actual being treated for the cancer, with travel expenses, meals, hotels, and such. Things you really don't think about when you do get diagnosed with a critical illness. And again, most healthcare insurance will cover the acute part of it, whether it be the bricks and mortar of a hospital stay, the cost of physicians, surgeries, whatever. They cover those costs, but what they don't cover are the hidden expenses that you run into, such as copays, if you're seeking treatment outside of your own geographic area. Perhaps you have child care issues. You're obviously, your mortgage is an ongoing concern, your car payments, whatever you have. So it would be nice, it would be probably ease the burden a little bit if you had a little bit of extra cash to help offset those hidden expenses. Thus, we believe that the marketplace for critical illness is just burgeoning in the U.S., especially with healthcare reform. These types of gap-type insurance policies will be adding a lot more value to your client base. I think you would be hard-pressed to ask anybody if they have known somebody who has been diagnosed with cancer, heart attack, or stroke. It's a very large community that have been diagnosed with those types of conditions, and then the next question you ask, well, do you think that if they had a little bit extra cash that it would help ease some of the financial stress brought on by that diagnosis? So very simple questions to ask your clients when you're opening up a discussion for critical illness. You know, who do you know? What happened? At what age did it happen? Obviously, they're never expected diagnoses. It just kind of happenstance come on you. What kind of financial strain or stress does that put on the household or even their business if they own a business? And then the logical question right after that, do you think if they had a little extra cash, whether it be $1,000 a month or $50,000 lump sum, would have helped to overcome some of that financial pressure that's put on a family or an individual if they have a critical diagnosis? And you're there to offer the solution as to ways in which to protect the financial health of that client of yours. Again, survival rates are increasing with many conditions. Just look back 20 years ago, the odds of surviving a cancer or stroke. You know, now they have this miracle drug with a stroke. If it's administered within 4 hours of you having the stroke, it minimizes the residual effects of having that stroke. Treatment costs continue to go up. Premiums are going up on health insurance. Deductibles, copays. The odds of a critical illness are increasing as well because of earlier diagnoses and tests that are being run today. And what we're seeing going down are the actual benefits of health insurance policies. Perhaps even the length of a covered hospital stay are increasing. So critical illness insurance helps fill this gap that's created by increasing survival rates, as an example, versus the decreasing benefits of traditional health insurance. It also presents to you an opportunity to perhaps offer someone coverage when they would not normally qualify for long-term care. This is an example of a long-term care application where you have knockout questions like, for example, you're currently using a wheelchair, walker, nebulizer, scooter, quad cane, or oxygen. Have you been restricted by having some form of therapy over the last few months, whether it be physical, occupational, speech? Do you have ADL issues? Do you have memory loss issues? Do you have mental disorders or certain medical conditions that are just knockouts completely for long-term care? These are not necessarily knockouts to apply for and get issued a critical illness type insurance policy. With Guaranteed Trust Life, with their product called Critical Care, they actually offer 3 different policies where a person could qualify for one of 3 offerings. They have a fully comprehensive plan they call their Plan A. Covers cancer, cancer in situ, heart attack, coronary artery, bypass surgery, stroke, Alzheimer's, kidney failure, organ transplant, paralysis, and coma. But in the course of answering the health questions on the application, if you've had heart issues in the last 10 years, you can qualify for what they call their Cancer Care Plus offering, which would cover cancer, Alzheimer's, kidney failure, organ transplant, paralysis, and coma. It just wouldn't cover anything to do with your heart. And vice versa, if you've had cancer issues in the past, you could qualify for what they call their Cardiac Care Plus. So there's 3 different ways to qualify for GTL's offering for critical illness. Again, the full Plan A, fully comprehensive, does have a few conditions that are limited only because people bounce back from certain conditions so quickly nowadays. The cancer in situ, which is basically stage 0 or stage 1 cancer, usually like breast or prostate, that they catch very early on, and it hasn't spread to any surrounding lymph nodes or metastasized. Heart attacks, you bounce back from. Usually it's almost like an outpatient stay at a hospital now where, heart attack diagnoses are relatively quickly cured and you're back to work within a week in most cases. The same with bypass surgery as well. But with critical care, with GTL, it's not a lump sum product. It pays out a monthly benefit over time, the minimum being $500 per month, up to a maximum of $3,000 per month, and you choose a plan length of 6, 12, 18, or 24 months. The long-term care flavor to the critical care offering with GTL is that it does pay an accelerated benefit if you are confined to a long-term care facility. So if you elected a $3,000 monthly benefit as an example, and you were diagnosed with a stroke, and you initially were discharged from the hospital home, the policy would pay you out $3,000 a month. But if you were discharged to a nursing home from the hospital, which is pretty much norm, depending upon the severity of the stroke, the policy would pay you double, or $6,000 a month, for as long as you're in a nursing home. And if you're actually stepped down to an assisted living, it would pay you half again as much, or $4,500 per month. And the nice thing about this policy is if you do elect a 24-month policy and you do have a stroke and you fully recover from that stroke in, say, 6 months and you're back to work, the policy will continue to pay out the full benefit of 24 months. So it's not outcome driven, it's diagnosis triggered. And again, as I mentioned earlier, the underwriting for these policies for critical illness is by far an easier process than underwriting for long-term care insurance. They do have heavy-duty knockout questions as far as certain conditions that if you have one of those, you will not be offered coverage, but it's a very simple process. It's a matter of how the applicant answers the questions on the application itself. It's a 5-question application, yes, no, and you'll know right from the outset if that person is going to qualify for coverage or not. They do run an RX check, and they do ask on the application that the applicant disclose what medicines they are on, but they do run a pharmacy check to verify meds that the person may be on. Typically, they do not order medical records. However, if something comes back suspect on the pharmacy check or on the MIB report that they run, they could call your client to ask them a few clarifying questions, and it could evolve into requiring medical records to be achieved. And if that is required, the applicant needs to provide those records at their expense to the company to continue underwriting. But the average underwriting turnaround time is about 3 to 4 days we're experiencing with GTL. And as I mentioned earlier, we're experiencing by far north of a 90% issue rate. They do also have an electronic app available on their website where you can complete it online and submit it. You'll know it will be accurate, and that'll knock a couple of days off the underwriting process as well. They have a very simple rate sheet for building out a policy. And you do have the option of downloading software from both our website and from GTL's website to do electronic quoting as well. But their rate sheet is very simple to use. Here is an example of the health questions that are asked on the GTL application. Up at the top, question number 1 are the listed conditions that if you have one of those, you cannot apply for coverage. The important questions here are questions 4 and 5, which have 2 parts to them, A and B. And the A links to any history of any cancers in the last 10 years, and the B question in the last 10 years relates to primarily heart diseases and or vascular diseases. And as I mentioned a little bit earlier, they do have an electronic app. It is a very easy application to complete online with a quick voice signature approval by the applicant. And you know the application obviously is completed correctly because they will not accept it unless everything's completed correctly. Just a little bit of history behind Guaranteed Trust Life. They've been in business since 1936. They are a privately held mutual company. Third generation of ownership and management of the company itself. They're licensed in every state except New York. They have well north of 1.5 million policyholders. Some of you may already be aware of GTL with another product that they have. They offer a nice little hospital indemnity plan that goes along well to enhance Medicare Advantage plans. So that kind of wraps up today's little session on the GTL offering for critical illness. We will be covering other carriers that we have. We also offer, GTL, for example, does have a lump sum product called Cancer, Heart Attack, and Stroke, CHS, where you can buy a minimum of $5,000 up to $50,000 lump sum, where once you get diagnosed, they just basically write you a check. A lot of the lump sum products out there are what we call one and done. They do cover several diagnoses, but it only pays out once as a benefit. Others will pay out into different, what they call silos, where you can get up to 3 different payments out of a single policy. But overall, we do believe that critical illness insurance is probably one of the fastest growing types of insurance you could be marketing or can be marketing out there. It's fantastic gap coverage for people to help augment what they already have in place for their own health insurance, whether it be on traditional Medicare, for example, or on an Obamacare type policy to give them those additional funds to help ease the financial burden. So with that, I'd like to open it up for any questions there may be from the field. If you have not entered your audio PIN, which is in the right-hand toolbar, you'll need to do so if you wish to pose a question. Okay, if there are no questions, then I'll wrap this session up for today. Again, keep an eye on our website, the www.whyam.com website. We do keep a running calendar up there of our upcoming webinars and live seminars that we do often throughout the country. And we also post pretty recent articles on industry news, whether it be long-term care, Medicare supplement, critical illness, or any other types of insurance like final expense that we believe that you would find interesting. They're all available on our website, along with the ability to download software, to download materials, whether it be an application or a brochure from any of the carriers that we represent. So if there are no questions, I guess we'll just wrap it up for today, and thank you everybody for joining me as well, and have a great weekend. Take care.